Hello, everybody. My name is Ophilia Mandara, and I am dropping in and inviting you here today into my virtual space to talk about primarily the sun in astrology. So, first, I just want to drop in a little bit with how I relate to astrology in terms of how I see this as a moving force in our universe. And I want to be really explicit. The thing that I love the most about astrology is beyond all of the psychological insights. That is a deep part of it. But what I want to invite is bringing astrology kind of from up here, which is a really exciting place to be with astrology. It can be really heady, intellectual, and there's so much philosophizing that can be done about it. And I love that. But I also want to invite just here in the heart, because really, when we connect to the movement of the planets, we are acknowledging very actively the animacy of the world that we live in. We're allowing ourselves really to be a part of a greater whole. So when I think about the sun, I actually love to begin with recognizing the sun as one of our most ancient ancestors who is still with us. And so maybe just imagine with me that it's very early in cosmic history, and the earth is oceanic, it's boiling, perhaps there's lightning, and it's just this great cacophony of life bubbling up. And one of the reasons that that's possible here is, of course, our very precise proximity to the sun. I like to imagine that the sun shared its light, continues to share its light. And in these early moments of the Earth's existence, seeing that the light of the sun was actually sowing seeds of life and prosperity, prospering in the sense of living into the early planet. And so, in this way, we see the sun as a life giver, holding this very ancient part of our vitality and of our ancestry and our evolution and our lineage. So I always want to start there because it connects us into, oh, yes, the sun is not merely a light in the sky, it is actually a primary life-giving force. And I think that we can take this for granted when we go about our days. The sun rises, the sun sets, and later I'll talk about some ways that we can connect more actively with this energy of the sun. But for now, let us move into how to relate and understand what the sun is signifying astrologically. And so, yes, that piece of the life giving force is critical because it does serve that purpose in our chart. It shows how our vitality moves through us. And an imagining that we can do is just imagine the daylight, the day sky, the blue sky, and how when the sun is out, we can't actually see the other stars. This is important because the sun astrologically signifies this part of ourselves that is so obvious, so luminous, so bright, that it actually takes up space in a way that other things might not be as evident or visible, which is not to say that it's the only thing operating in our chart, but there's an undeniable presence and visibility, and it's almost royal in this way, where when the sun is out, that is the attention. The attention is daylight. Now, the next thing that I want to bring up, as you can tell, I'm weaving in these very literal observations of the sun as a way of understanding it astrologically. And this is something that applies to many of the planets, most of them really, is how they move in space, how we see them, how we perceive them, what they look like, how they behave. And one of the other things that I want to talk about is the centrality of the sun in our solar system. The sun has a gravitational pull. Everything in our cosmic neighborhood orients around the sun. And this is essentially how we, in our embodied existence in this particular form, experience our lives. And there's a lot that we can dig into here around self and around ego. But I just want to play with this realization or comprehension of that from birth until we die, we experience through the lens of I. And we can, and is a natural part of our being, to also experience other perspectives that aren't so rooted in the I am. And those are really critical and important ways of perceiving that are also life-giving. But for the purposes of astrology, thinking of this starring role that we play in our own lives is really foundational. So even when we go out into these kind of expansive experiences of interconnection and are able to kind of slip beyond the I, unless we're literally at that moment of death, generally we come back to the anchor of self, or in some way we're experiencing those expanded perspectives through the aperture of the individual. And as I said, there's so much that we can get into and explore around that. What does individuality mean? And I bring this up not to suggest that the individual is everything, but it is highly relevant to experience, our embodied experience. And getting up close and connecting with this is a lot of what the sun is about. So this idea of the starring role, in our lives, we experience other people, we experience events that orbit around us, at least from the experiential perspective. So we have people, we have occurrences that transit through our lives, and we experience ourselves as central, even if we are a part of a greater truth. So this idea that in a way we are all carrying our own solar system, and that the nature of being for humanity is a collection of interactive, dynamic solar systems. So we have this awareness coming through around how the sun represents our individuality, our self, and our starring role, and the quality, our relationship to our own starring role. So think about this. How many of your frustrations, your trials, your opportunities through life are actually related to either your ease of accessing what your role is in the world, or the obstacles that come up in the cultivation of your role in the world? I think that it's fair to say that there's a lot of fulfillment that comes from being in tune and aligned to what feels like our authentic place and purpose and calling. And so when we're looking at the sun in a birth chart, this is one of the primary pieces that it is speaking to. The other planets and how they relate to the placement of the sun in the chart can show, as well as, of course, the sign that the sun is in, can show, all right, what is this person being called to? What is their soul spark? What is the light that they want to shine into the world, that their soul wants to shine into the world? And how is that either coming up against confrontation and blockages, or being given support, being lent support? And I also want to make it very abundantly clear that most of the time, it's not an either or. We're all carrying unique challenges and trials in the attunement to our calling, the attunement to our purpose. And this can be evidenced in the birth chart. I also want to say that our trials are very often directly related to the cultivation of our purpose. So it's not so simple as, oh, I have a difficult Saturn Sun aspect, and so I can't express my purpose. It's more that the shaping, the trial, the confrontation, the obstacles that Saturn presents are a part of the development of a person's purpose. And that can be said of any other aspect, right? So something else that I really try to cultivate in astrology is the sense and the deep awareness that everything that surfaces, whether it seems good or bad, is a part of the development of why we're here. And this is one of the gifts that the sun offers us in our birth chart. So in a very literal way, something else that's valuable to mention about the sun is that it is not only about our calling and our purpose, but our level of comfort in our own skin. It can very literally have to do with confidence, courage, valor, and self-esteem. So it is, in essence, showing us what is our relationship to self, what wants to come through this aperture, this vessel. And does that flow like water? Is it rooted in the earth? Is it slow and fixed? Is it fast and quick? Is it super comfortable and relaxed and ready to show itself off? Does it prefer to deflect its light to others? Does it take joy in shining? Does it prefer to work in support of other people shining their light? These are all things that we can see in the birth chart. Now, I know I touched on this a bit earlier in terms of speaking to the sun as this most ancient ancestor, but I do also want to just place here that the sun in the chart, there's a kingly quality, and because of this, there can actually be interpretations of father figures in a person's life, how that relationship looked, perhaps even events surrounding the father or father figures. Something else that I would like to share with you are just some words for the sun to expand on its signification and meaning. So obviously self, ego, sovereignty, identity, expression, truth, clarity, illumination, performance, essence, brilliance, glory, autonomy, enlightenment, eminence, singularity, status, integrity, dignity, individuality, personhood, esteem, renown, confidence, authenticity, potency, authority, and shine. And one other thing that I just find so beautiful about the significations of the sun is that it can have to do with truthfulness. Because when we connect to the light of the sun, of course, there are shadows, but in the daytime, everything is visible. It is the known realm. It is the quantifiable realm. There's a quality of nothing being hidden by the unstoppable, enduring light of the sun. So with the sun, we also get this signification of truthfulness and honesty and our relationship to those functions. Now, I'd like to move into an invitation for a practice that you can do on your own time. And so I'll be sharing an invocation and a meditation prompt for the sun. So before you get started, I invite you, when you do this, to set a meditation timer just for 10 minutes, however long you want. So get comfortable. You can start the timer and then recite and read aloud. It's important to really allow yourself to move into the expression. The sun is all about expression. So I invite you to read this aloud if you can. And this practice is about inviting the sun's energy to introduce itself to you, or for you to get to know this energy better. So I invite you, when you're doing this practice, as you get started, to just first visualize the sun. Visualize it in your heart, this golden glow, and recite the following. I call to the vast, life-giving star that shines light, heat, and life onto our planet. I call to this ancient ancestor that gave our planet the spark of life that now thrives in diversity and abundance. I call to the sun, the enduring, glorious, brilliant, and vital center of our solar system, to illuminate me, to brighten me from the inside out, so that I may know you in your full, resplendent eminence. Share with me your teachings of honor, of truth, of generosity. Imbue me with the light of pure, unending awareness. I am listening. After you recite this, you can move into 10 minutes or so of silent meditation, continuing to visualize the sun and just paying attention to the quality of your thoughts. Write it down. Just write down anything that came through, because we are interfacing with a living energy. And when we call the energy of the sun to us, likely there will be a communication if you're open to it. And it could be anything from, here's a perspective or an insight about the astrological significance of the sun, or it could be a message that particularly pertains to how to be in your full expression, how to walk with your sun in the brightest of ways, in the ways that is most attuned to you, to your authentic self, and to the way that the sun moves in your birth chart. Now I'm going to offer you 8 different writing prompts that have to do with getting to know the sun. And these are both meant to be personal and getting to know yourself and the way that the themes of the sun work through you. And it's also an invitation to think a little bit more collectively about the archetype of the sun and its broader implications. So for the first one, describe the sun in the sky. Do a little research, some scientific information about the sun and the energy that it emits, and then think, what metaphors or analogies can you derive from the sun's very physical, literal form that serve as good parallels to its astrological meaning? Come up with 3 simple examples. 2, for this next writing prompt, reflect on, how does identity contribute to culture, community, and society? What are some of the benefits and issues here? Now, 3, name 3 people that you perceive as having a healthy ego, a healthy identity. In your perspective, what makes it so? What about their behavior supports the healthiness of their ego and their identity? And for number 4, what, in your opinion, is an unhealthy expression of identity or ego? How have you seen this in yourself, your community, or your culture? And writing prompt number 5. Imagine that when you walk into a space, your personality shows itself as light. Taking into account your comfort level with expressing yourself and being seen in public spaces, how would you describe the quality of your light? How does it shine from you and move through the space? Are you comfortable shining? Take note of any feelings that come up as you do this exercise, and remember that there's really no right or wrong answer. With this one, you may also want to consider in this visualization practice, is there a way that you would like your light to shine that would feel more authentic? Now, 6, if you were to express your essence in 3 words, what would they be? Next, turn this into a prayer of gratitude. For example, if your 3 words are soft, curious, and hopeful, turn them into some kind of power statement or a love letter to yourself. So you could say, I bow to my soft nature. I revere and respect my insatiable curiosity. I give thanks to the ways that I always find hope. Play with it and also try speaking it aloud, finding what feels really good to speak. And 7, think of an area in your life where you feel invisible. Visualize what it would be like to be more visible, more seen, more witnessed in this area of your life, and just write down what you notice. It could be where you feel this in your body when you tune into this invisibility, and what it would feel like to shift that into being more seen. And maybe it's notes on what would need to change in order for you to feel more visible in this space. 8, write your own version of an invocation for the sun in your own words and with your own understanding of the sun's specific meaning. How would you praise and summon the energy of the sun to you? I mentioned that I would offer some ways of connecting with the sun. So I offered the meditation, the invocation practice, and the writing prompts. But there are more ways that we can ritualize our relationship to the sun and build little habits to call this energy more deeply into our life. The wonderful thing about solar ritual is that it is really accessible, because even on cold or cloudy days, the sun is still there, bringing us at least some light. So here are some low pressure ways of incorporating solar energy into your life. First, regularly receive early morning light. Stand preferably outside, though if it's really cold, you can be inside by a window, and stand in the beams of the sun when the sun is still fresh in the sky. Try to make it for sunrise or within 2 to 3 hours following sunrise. And just see how long you can simply stand or sit in the direct light of this early morning sun and come into contact. Feel the particles of light bathing you. This is really the most direct and simple of ways of connecting with the sun. And if you do it regularly, I think that you'll notice a difference in how you connect to your own light. So approach this like a communication or a relationship. You're meeting the sun, engaging with the sun, rather than perhaps taking the sunlight for granted. Now, the next one that I want to talk about is actually just flowers, bringing certain flowers into your space. It could be sunflowers. It could also be yellow chrysanthemums, or any flowers that have that bright sun ray quality, yellow, petaled, and emanating outward. And this is something that you can just bring into your space to encourage and even just remind yourself of the presence of the sun. And lastly, gold. So if it's a, honking piece of gold jewelry, that's great. But it could also just be some of that gold leaf, those magical little bottles of gold leaf suspended in liquid. You can also work with the energy of the sun through carnelian, or a stone called sunstone. And these are things that you can keep on your body, or place on an altar. And all of these suggestions, so connecting with the early morning sun, bringing sun-like flowers into your space, or working with certain metals or minerals, this is really helpful when you are perhaps just wanting to connect with and get to know the sun, but also like if you're coming up against a space in your life, in your being, where you feel like it's harder to be in your fullness, in your full shine, where you're coming up perhaps against obstacles of self-doubt or worry or difficulty around your self-image. These are all simple practices that can be done in a way of gently remediating those difficulties through ritual. So thank you so much for being with me in this little session on the sun. There's always so much more that we could get into, and it's so important to remember that everybody's sun is different. Everybody's sun in their chart is beautiful and imbued with their own gifts and trials and growth edges. So if this is something that you want to learn more about, please reach out to me. You can visit my website, which is linked in the comment sections, and we can schedule a session. And I would love to explore how the sun is shining in your chart. I hope to hear from you soon. Thank you so much for joining me.